Yep, what a day. So I just shot 20 minutes of video. Didn't have this clipped on because my monitor's not working, so I'm going to have to reshoot this. I'm just going to go over the notes real quick. Man, what a day. So I'm talking about dialogue real quick, and the first thing for new authors is use the word said for your dialogue tags or asked in 95% of the occasions, right? Do not think you're going to be clever by using different types of dialogue, spoken, yelled, shouted, screamed, whatever. Just use said. Make it clear what's happening in the dialogue. I use my example is I have Bagel on top of my shelf. He's going to jump down in someone's lap. Indicates lap. And she said, oh, that's what we're doing right now. And in that sentence, I've conveyed her point of view that he's just jumping into her lap and she's surprised by it. And I didn't even have to use an action tag. I'm just like, okay, he wants to be in her lap. He jumps into her lap, but I don't even say that. I just say, is that what we're doing right now? Yeah, okay, all right, I get it. So dialogue tags, details hidden in plain sight. So if you're gonna drip some stuff in there, like you can drip in some lore early on and then have it not come to fruition. Like in Stormlight Archive, Hoyd mentions that there's a dragon that lives nearby that he is not really on speaking terms with, and which is fine. But then you're like, hey, well, who's that dragon? And it comes up again that it's cultivation. But like you have to like do a close read of it. The other thing is like, speaking of dialogue, I want to have like a bunch of dialogue, and then I want to have like a beat, and then Weaver sat back and then he twiddled his little popper stick, and then he thought about what was going on, and then he said, you should add dialogue where it makes sense, but also think about how the character speaks. And when I say think about how the character speaks, when I wrote Sect Leader, each one of the cultivation sect had a specific way of speaking. So Jessica, who was isekai'd, I'm not doing any more isekai stories right now, she has a way of speaking because she's from Denver. She's an accountant from Denver, and she's a rationalist, so she has a way of speaking. She speaks like I speak. She's a first-generation Korean American, so that informs her talking. She's also a fifth realm cultivator when she arrives, which means that people respect her, and they're going to speak to this about themselves in the third person. They're going to say, "This one is honored to see your presence," and then depending on if they're inside of the sect or outside of the sect, they're going to address her a different way. Like, they're going to call her like a sect elder or sect leader, or they're going to call her like cultivator, depending on who they are. So the person is speaking to another person in such a way because of the social standing. And in some cases, it is because that person is so much stronger than them. Like, yes, Mr. President, I'm speaking to that person and I'm talking to them that way. But would I speak to someone if I was like, hey, Joe, if I'm speaking to you directly and we're friends, then I'm not going to call you Mr. President. I'm going to call you Joe, right? In this example, it is February 28th, last day of Black History Month. So think about how the character thinks about themselves in perspective. And then my last example is the Lopen. So in the Stormlight Archive, which is something I'm going to reference twice here, Lopen is a character who speaks about himself in third person. He is Herdazian. He is the only character with one arm. He is very vocal about it being one arm, and he is part of Bridge 4. So each time the Lopen speaks, gotcha, he speaks like he is in charge, and then he has a joke. This is very apparent in the audiobook, which I love. And I want you to think about how the Lopen speaks in third person. And we don't see another Herdazian until about book 3, when the Minx arrives. The Minx is a general from the Herdazian country. He has a way, the Minx speaks Herdazian, speaks in a Herdazian way, just the way that Lopen does, but Lopen speaks in third person. So you're just like, okay, you can't really do an accent in text, but you can have them speak in third person. You can have some vocal tics in there that make sense for the character, right? And like different genres will have different dialogue tropes, right? I think the thing here is like, Snape ejaculated, blah, right? Like, don't do that. You don't, so like, the thing I'm doing most is like, you don't have to use dialogue tags now in progression fantasy as much as possible to do with that. That shows that you're just like, you're able to convey which character this is by how they're talking. Great. If you can tell me, if you can have like a scene between two characters where they're just doing beats, or if you indicate who the character is by having a beat before that, like Weaver picked up his hat and then looked at you and said blah 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 blah, right? If you can convey who the character is who was about to speak or who just spoke through a beat that goes before or after the dialogue, then you're winning, right? And you don't have to add a dialogue tag. You could, I would say, save the word count. Focus on what's important. I think that's it. Let's see. Details hit. Yeah. So and that's the other thing is like, to add like details hidden in plain sight, you have to go back in retrospect. In most cases, you don't know how the story is going to end exactly, and you have to go back after the thing and add the foreshadowing that should have been there the whole time. But because you're a professional, you're going to add later on. And it's fine to do that on your second draft. I'm doing a bunch of second drafts soon, and man, this is going to be fun. Because each time you're like, I'm going to add something, but I don't want to take away from what's about to happen. As long as you keep in the same sense. Man. Editing. It happens to all of us. It's the worst. All right, well, that's what I got. Spent way too much time on this. Our dialogue.